I'm not afraid of dying. I just don't want to be there when it happens. That's a quote from Woody Allen. Is this how you feel about death? Is this how I feel about death? Hi, it's Margaret Maloney, and welcome to Season 3 of the Death Dhamma podcast. I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so appreciative that you are part of my community. And yet, I seek not to be attached to the idea of the podcast or even to the idea of our community. And that's our topic this season: attachment, clinging, and aversion. What happens when we really want something? What happens when we really don't want something? And what does it do to our suffering and dissatisfaction? Let's dive in and find out a little bit more with today's episode. When it is time to prepare for your final moments, what will be on your mind? Many people fear leaving behind unfinished business, unfulfilled dreams, or unresolved conflicts with loved ones when they die. They may also worry about the impact their death will have on their loved ones, such as leaving them with financial burdens, or emotional distress. For some, the fear of death may be rooted in a fear of the unknown or uncertainty about what happens after death. Ultimately, the fear of leaving behind a legacy or not making a significant impact on the world can also be a concern for some individuals. And yet, we know from the teachings that the best peaceful death comes from having none of these concerns at the time of death. I intend to live forever or die trying. That's a quote from Groucho Marx, whose last words were allegedly, "Die, my dear? Why, that's the last thing I'll do." And you know what? Depending on what you believe, he was technically correct. Also, he wasn't a Buddhist. And for some reason, as I'm preparing our episode today, you can see that I have been looking at quotes around death that are maybe more lighthearted, right? And now not everyone has seen Groucho Marx's films. Groucho Marx has not been around for a while. He died in 1977. He's still in the Western world and other areas too, probably, still kind of in the pop culture arena. He had bushy black eyebrows, a thick mustache, a cigar always hanging out of his mouth. And he was always making these, like dry observations. And he worked with his brothers, Harpo and Chico, and their comedy sketches live on. I'm sure you can find them. Although now it's obvious that his humor was unkind. But really, it's that opening quote that I began with, in the teaser today about "I'm not afraid to die, I just don't want to be there when it happens." That might really capture the feelings of many of us, how we feel about death, and understanding that it will happen, but we would like it to be as quick and painless as possible. And who wouldn't want to die peacefully in his or her sleep? And you might, I might, also, we might not. When it comes to death and fear of death, this podcast, the column I write for Buddhist or Global, and both my books, Carpooling with Death, How Living with Death Can Make You Stronger, Wiser, and Fearless, and Sitting with Death, Buddhist Insights to Help You Face Your Fears and Live a Peaceful Life, they were all inspired by my understanding or my belief that it was not my own death that I fear, but the death of the ones who were closest to me. And of course they died. And simply stating that it was difficult, that's really an understatement. I cannot be grateful enough for the Buddha's teachings and my practice. That is what really gave me the resilience I needed to move forward. Today, in this journaling episode of the Death Dhamma podcast, I wonder, when I'm dying, if I'm aware that I am dying, what will I have a hard time letting go of? And if I do die in my sleep, as I age and move more closely toward my final day, what will be my challenges? What will I worry about? What is it I'm going to try to hang on to? Just a couple of episodes ago, in episode 15 with Olivia Barham, we talked about how reassuring it could be if we were able to accept death as a gift. And in that analogy, we acknowledge that when you reach out to accept a gift, if you are already holding on to something, you have to let that something go, set it aside, put it down, so that you can accept the gift with at least one, but hopefully both hands, right? And to have a peaceful death, we need to let go. Also, to have a peaceful life, we need to let go. You would think that with a lifetime of opportunities to let go, that as we get closer to the finish line, we would be better at letting go. Now, in our last episode, I shared with you the story of my parents' friend who found release after speaking with each of his siblings. And then I read an excerpt from Anguttara 6.16, the Nakula Sutta. Remember, Nakula's mother is trying to calm her dying husband by walking him through some of his fears. Her ability to earn an income after he dies, whether or not she'll remarry, whether or not she'll continue her Buddhist practice. And after she identifies each fear, she assures him that it's going to be okay. And she tells him why, how she'll be able to handle that situation. She reminds him of her strength in various areas. And she also reminds him that death is more painful for one who is worried, and that the Buddha advises against worry at the time of death. All the more important for us, what a reminder to become death ready, to know that death is coming and to prepare for it at both the spiritual and the mundane level, to have our lives in order as much as possible. And that way, when the time comes, some of these fears will not surface. And it's also important to realize that death will come when it comes, and we may not have everything in order. And still, we want to find peace. And that comes from practicing now and practicing as much as possible during our final moments. Or, if you are the one sitting with the dying, to help that dying person in a way similar to Nakula's mother. She helped her husband recognize and do away with, a certain list of fears. And if there is an item that's out of order, because it's possible that there will be, so you could be sitting with someone and helping them let go, and there could be something that's, not squared away yet. You don't want to lie or give false hope to the dying person, but perhaps remind him or her of the strength and capability of those left behind to handle whatever needs to be handled. Because that's what needs to happen. Still, I'm not feeling certain about all of it in terms of what it is exactly I will have a hard time with. And that's not because the answer is that I'm 100% ready to let go. I know better. I'm just a person in this world finding my way like everyone else. I know that whenever my time comes, I'm leaving something unfinished. Now, I'm comfortable with this idea. And you know what? I actually kind of hope I leave something unfinished because it means I was able to be somewhat active. Even if what I left unfinished was just a sentence, I was doing something, right? I was able to do something. I do think that I will be concerned about the people I love and what will happen in their lives. Not because I think they cannot function without me. That's crazy. Of course they can. They functioned before they met me. They'll function after. It might be more of, what we call FOMO, right? Or fear of missing out. And it reminds me of, so my father, right? He went through terminal cancer. We've discussed this before. And he knew. And I remember one day visiting him and we were sitting at I think it was at the breakfast table. We were having breakfast. And he started asking me some questions about, things I was working on in my life. And one of those things was, my degree. I was working on my PhD at the time and I hadn't finished. And he was curious about, where I was going to go and where I was going to place my emphasis and what would I do after I finished the degree. And it was a nice discussion. And I realized that he was asking me those questions because he knew he wasn't going to be there when I got to a certain point. We both knew it. And so he wanted to know. He wanted to have an idea of, where I was headed. What direction might my life take after he was gone? Not that either of us knew for certain or could control it, but of the areas that he knew I was working on, like what was I going to do and where was it going to go? And, what did I see myself working on next? And that type of thing. And so it was a good discussion. And I think in some ways, maybe it helped him reconcile his path, right? And the idea of he wasn't going to be here to see me. And I get that. Because I think when I think about the concerns I have, what will it be hard for me? I think it will be hard for me I'll have that fear of missing out, even though I won't know I'm missing out in theory, right? That missing out of being part of the lives of people I care about. Still, to understand more of what I will find difficult to let go of, or what I have fears around, I'm going to meditate on some of the potential key issues. What will the lives of my closest friends look like? Who will take care of my pets? I have 2 cats. What's going to happen to them? Assuming I still have 2 cats when I die, right? Who will know to update and eventually dismantle my websites and some of my professional things? Should my books live on? What should happen with that? You can see I'm building a list. And while some of these things on my list might seem to lack depth, once on the cushion or in walking meditation, I truly believe that these are the entry points that are going to lead me to examine other concerns. And those other concerns that seem to pop up randomly, that is probably where my real resistance and clinging lives, is behind some of these things. Or so I think. It's an experiment. And if you try it, if you try this type of contemplation, I hope you let me know about your experience and what has worked for you in this situation. I have realized that in a way, I've come full circle. When the people who are closest to you are gone, you recreate your life. At least I did. And if you ever find yourself in that position, I hope you do too, because you know what? You're not the one who died. And unless you become a solitary person, cut off from everyone, in that new life, there's going to be new relationships, new people you love and care about. And I already know that when they're gone, I'm going to feel sadness. And there's going to be grief. So in some ways, I guess I'm back to where I started when I started this journey of Death Dhamma, right? But I have chosen the path of I am a human being and I enjoy other human beings and I love them and care about them. And so, yes, when they are gone, there is going to be sadness. There will be grief. And my practice will prepare me and guide me. All right, so that's where I am with that today. And thanks for being here and listening as I actually, journal out loud about letting go and fear of things to let go of upon death. May you be well and happy. I would love to hear from you, your thoughts, your suggestions, your own stories about attachment. So follow this link, I'm going to read it to you in a minute here, to leave me a 90-second message with your ideas and suggestions. You can go to https://www.speakpipe.com/death_Dhamma_podcast. I suppose you could also just use your favorite search engine to say SpeakPipe Death Dhamma Podcast. And there you can record an audio message for me. And be sure to come over to margaretmaloney.com. That's MargaretMeloni.com and join the community. You've been listening to the Death Dhamma Podcast with your host, Margaret Maloney. Thank you so much for being here. Come find me on margaretmaloney.com, MargaretMeloni.com. And until we meet again, may you be well, may you be happy, may you be at ease, and may you be free from suffering. Bye for now.